All right, Leighton Flowers asked the question, if someone is born incapable, on what basis are they culpable? And the answer is law. Law is the prerequisite which establishes responsibility, accountability, culpability, liability, blame, and fault. Law, not your power of contrary choice, not your Platonic philosophical speculations concerning the human libertarian free will of man. First of all, that's not how the Bible defines free will, anyways, as the power of contrary choice. That's an improper definition of free will. But the synergists all think that free will is the prerequisite which establishes culpability. Free will, the power of contrary choice. So their capabilities, their abilities personally are what establish culpability. No, they are not. It is law. So my response here was very simple. I responded to Soteriology 101 here. I said, law is the basis for responsibility, accountability, liability, culpability, blame, and fault. Your philosophical Platonic definition of human free will is not the prerequisite which establishes culpability. Human ability or inability has no bearing on responsibility. Law is the prerequisite which establishes it. Simple enough. And then I answer again, because culpability, liability, responsibility, accountability, blame, and fault are not dependent on ability or inability of the person, nor are these things dependent on the Platonic definition of human free will either. Law is the prerequisite which establishes these things. If there is no law, there is no culpability, liability, responsibility, accountability, blame, or fault. That's what Scripture teaches anyways. Without law, there is no sin. Without law, there is no responsibility, no culpability, liability, all that stuff. Blame, fault. These are all synonymous concepts, by the way. But let's go to I'm just going to try to make this quick. Synergistic assertions about the responsibility of man. Synergists assert that divine decisional decretal determinism eliminates man's responsibility. It does not. If there's no power of contrary choice, then man cannot be responsible for what he says or does, says the synergist. Let's go down, because Dr. Robert L. Reymond to the rescue. Dr. Robert L. Reymond, in his systematic theology book, actually gives the best definition of responsibility that I've ever read anywhere in any Reformed writings. Dr. Gordon H. Clark also came very close to this in his response to the issue of responsibility. But here's Reymond. It is clear that God is not the chargeable cause of sin, and that man alone is responsible for his sin. This may be shown by a careful analysis of the meaning of responsibility, culpability, accountability, liability, blame, fault, and the necessary condition for. So the definition of, so he's going to give a definition of it. Definitions are important. If you can't define the terms that you use properly, then you're demonstrating that you do not know what you're talking about when you use those words. So the definition of meaning of responsibility and the prerequisite which establishes responsibility, the necessary condition for. That's what he means by that. By that is the prerequisite which establishes it. So the obligation to give a response or render an accountability of one's actions to a lawgiver. So they are a responsible moral agent. A man is a responsible moral agent if he can and will be required to give an account to a lawgiver for any and all infractions he commits against the law imposed upon him by the lawgiver. So law is the prerequisite, and that presupposes a lawgiver, obviously. And then, of course, a judge to judge whether that person has broken the law or not. God is all these things. Lawgiver. He has a law, and he is judge. Judge, jury, and executioner is what God is. Whether or not he has free will in the synergistic sense of the term is irrelevant to the question of responsibility. Free will has nothing to do with the establishment of responsibility. What makes a person responsible is whether there is a lawgiver over him who has declared that he will require that person to render an account or give a response to him for his thoughts, words, and actions. Dr. Robert L. Reymond, Systematic Theology book, page 375. Second edition, Nashville, Tennessee, Thomas Nelson. So let's break down Robert Reymond's excellent presentation. And we will see that responsibility can never apply to God himself. Why? Because who is the lawgiver over God, whereby God must obey that law imposed upon him? Unless you're a Mormon. Unless you're a Mormon, you actually believe that there is a higher lawgiver than God himself who imposed the law upon God, who was once a man that lived on a planet that circled a star called Kolob or something like that. And then he obeyed these laws so well that he became God's status, and then he created his own world. That's Mormonism nonsense. But no, there is no higher authority than God to impose law upon him. The definition of responsibility itself, to give a response or render an account to a lawgiver for any and all infractions of the law imposed by the lawgiver. There must be a lawgiver who commands stuff. Okay, that's what law is. Law is written in the imperative mood of speech. Do this, don't do this, don't do this. Those are laws. Those who reside under the lawgiver's laws are called sub lego, under law. Will be required, they're subject to the law, will be required to give a response for their thoughts, words, and actions as they relate to his law. So the prerequisite required to establish responsibility, I'm in complete agreement with Dr. Robert L. Reymond that free will is not the prerequisite which establishes responsibility or culpability. It is law that establishes a human being's responsibility. So there must be some law or group of laws imposed on them. Government imposes laws upon us, and that establishes the responsibility of its citizens. In other words, if there's no law, there's no responsibility. Law is the prerequisite which establishes all these things. Okay, I'm going to cut it short because we can get into the distinction between law and gospel. Martin Luther's great contribution to the Reformation, distinction between law and gospel, and of course, the distinction between law and grace. Grace is something given despite the fact that they have broken the law. Okay? So God himself is the lawgiver, the judge, the executioner. Creatures are responsible because they are under law or sub lego. No creature is autonomous, a law unto himself. Autonomy belongs to God alone, never to creatures. It never has belonged to creatures, and it never will belong to creatures. Autonomos belongs to God alone. God alone is a law unto himself. Okay? Unbelievers conduct their entire lives thinking they are a law unto themselves with respect to their relationship to their Creator and his laws, but Christians are not allowed to think for a moment that we are a law unto themselves, since that's what Scripture reveals. I'm not asking this. Here's Leighton Flowers' silliness. I'm not asking this because I've not heard the various Calvinistic replies, because I've engaged those replies. No, you have not. No, because you have a faulty definition of responsibility, culpability, accountability, liability, blame, and fault. You have not addressed the issues. And when you have tried to, you fail. And you don't know the proper definition of responsibility. So I ask this question to make the reader think about utter irrationality of the claims. Well, the semi-Pelagians don't know what they're talking about. That's the whole point. That's the whole problem. They have improper definitions of terms. We have same vocabulary, different dictionary. Yes, we actually derive our definitions from Scripture, not from Platonic philosophy like the semi-Pelagians, like Leighton Flowers does. Okay, so the irrationality of the claim of the semi-Pelagian Leighton Flowers, in attempting to come up with a proper definition of culpability, he fails. He doesn't do it. Or attempting to get the church to believe God holds everyone in hell culpable for that which they were born incapable of doing. Well, everyone in hell for their sin. Sin is any lack of conformity or transgression of the law of God. So why does he do it? Not for their incapabilities. He does it for their sin. Their incapabilities or capabilities are irrelevant to the discussion of God holding everyone in hell or burning them up in the lake of fire, which the Bible teaches. I'm an annihilationist, by the way. They will not burn throughout the ceaseless ages of eternity in the lake of fire. The lake of fire will do its job, burn up all the wicked from all time, and then they'll just be done, dust. They'll just be ashes, be gone. The wind will sweep them away, never to be seen again. So, but yes, they will be culpable in the lake of fire, not for their inabilities or incapabilities, but for what they actually did, their sin, okay? And they were born in sin, of course. And then that gets into total depravity and the whole semi-Pelagianism of Leighton Flowers. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Soli Deo Gloria.